Soul Garden.
Having trouble finding that special soulmate? Oh, I know. Are you ready to find love? So what do you think your ideal mate is? This I can solve for you. Check out Secrets of Birthdays, the Love and Lust Report at secretsofbirthdays.com. Hello, my fellow soul gardeners. Welcome back to Astro 102. We are talking about the more complicated portions of reading charts. And after the aspects, now I'm going to talk about the solar and lunar eclipse. What's that? Well, this is something that's specialized. In fact, the new astrologers or the younger astrologers are working with these elements more so than the classic astrologers, I've noticed. It's kind of a new thing, kind of like the asteroids, which we'll get to eventually. What it is, as you well know, there is a solar and lunar eclipse that happens during the course of the year. There's actually usually twice, if I'm not mistaken. Sometimes, yes, twice. And these are powerful events, right? Now, last year in 2009, I might be dating myself depending on how long this series is on the air, but in 2009, we had solar and lunar eclipses in Cancer, and that's what killed Michael Jackson and Ed McMahon, and all these celebrity deaths died right at that period. Then we had solar and lunar eclipse again in Capricorn, and we had, of course, the major earthquake in Haiti and all that chaos. So things happen. And so what we do is we look at the solar and lunar eclipse that occurred prior to your birthday, the day you were born, okay? And the idea here is it's not so much the vibration of the moment you were born, but rather it's an influence. It is a spiritual influence that happens to you while you're in your mother's womb. So you take your date of birth and you find the lunar eclipse that happened just before your date of birth. So that could be up to 3 months ahead of your date of birth. And you find the solar eclipse that happened before your date of birth. Now, I use a book called Spiritual Astrology by Jan Spiller to kind of decode mine. There's lots of resources out there. If nothing else, go to the NASA website. NASA keeps a full list of every solar and lunar eclipse of every year. It doesn't matter if it's a partial eclipse or a full eclipse. An eclipse is an eclipse is an eclipse. And let's kind of define what eclipses are. Remember, a solar eclipse, solar is when the moon gets in the way of the sun. The moon eclipses the sun. So a solar eclipse is basically the sun and moon conjuncting. It happens on a new moon. So solar eclipses happen on new moons on light cast days. Lunar eclipses happen when the Earth's shadow gets in the way of the moon. This is the Earth, by the way, gets in the way of the moon, okay? So the Earth's shadow eclipses the moon. Those happen on full moons, when the full moon disappears for a moment. And the gods are coming, right? And that's how you determine it. Now, metaphorically in our life, the lunar eclipse and the sign of the lunar eclipse and the degree of the lunar eclipse represents a place in the person's chart where they are weak, okay? It is a weakness. It is a breakdown. After all, it is a tear, right? The sun and moon are tug-of-warring on each other. You know from full moons that it's going to be a breakdown. It's going to be a surrender of the sun, giving the moon more importance. So a lunar eclipse tells me this is an area where the soul is super weak, where it's not karma-based. It's not usually where they've screwed up in the past. And if they have screwed up in the past, it's because they were ignorant. It wasn't because they made the wrong decision. Lunar eclipse is often a lack of awareness. It is spiritual ignorance. And I don't think we can incarnate enough to learn everything. So of course we're going to show up to the game with some ignorances, right? The solar eclipse is just the opposite. It is a superpower. In fact, the solar eclipse is so influential in a chart that I literally regard it as a second sun sign. It is a master's degree from a past life. And it explains a lot of the nuances in your chart that you haven't been able to explain before. A lot of people say, oh, I'm a Taurus, but why am I so compassionate and loving and mother-like? I'm like a crybaby. Solar eclipse in Cancer. I find that common, okay? So let's look at the eclipses and how they may find. Now, most of the time, the eclipses will happen in opposite signs. So if the person has a solar eclipse in Cancer, they usually have a lunar eclipse in Capricorn. If the person has a solar eclipse in Sagittarius, they usually have a lunar eclipse in Gemini. Not always the case. Sometimes the solar and lunar eclipse are in the same sign, and sometimes they're in different signs. When they're in the same sign, that means the person is both a master and an idiot in the same sign. Usually what that comes down to is they've already got a big working knowledge of that, the solar eclipse, but they're also looking to increase their knowledge, because usually those you find are masters already. So if you have a solar eclipse in Taurus and a lunar eclipse in Taurus, it's that you know how to manifest on the planet, how to be a producer, but you're still wanting to be better at it, and there's still some things you don't understand. The solar eclipse often also tells us where we teach on the planet, and the lunar eclipse is where we learn. Okay, so if the solar eclipse is in Sagittarius, you are a philosopher, you are a teacher, you teach belief structure. if you have a solar eclipse in Sagittarius and a lunar eclipse, or anything, or any sign for that matter, I find that you're both teaching and learning in the same sign. These are the people that learn something and then turn around and act like they're the expert, which they are. They just learned it and they teach it. So a lot of times you find solar and lunar eclipse in the same sign when it's learn then teach, okay? That's common. The lunar eclipse tells us where people tend to fall weak at the knees. And as a result, lunar and solar eclipses tend to tell us the kind of people we draw in, okay? So let's say I have a lunar eclipse in Cancer, okay? So I'm an idiot at taking care of myself. Well, I draw in two types of people. People that will nurture me and want to be my mom and want to take care of me, and people who don't nurture me at all and force me to take care of myself. Both types get pulled in. So I get an idea of the kind of people you're pulling into your life based on your lunar eclipse and your solar eclipse, okay? In the same right, it works with the solar eclipse. So if I had a lunar eclipse in Cancer, which means I can't take care of myself, I have a solar eclipse in Capricorn, which means I'm good at being the dad, I'm good at being a parent, I'm good at taking control of everything else in the world, but obviously myself. So as a solar eclipse in Capricorn, you would draw in people who can't get control of their life is out of control, they're not organized, they're bad in business, they're bad at organization, they're bad at taking control of things, okay? They have control issues in the sense of irresponsibility, or I could draw in people who are control freaks who are trying to control me all the time instead of controlling their life. So the solar and lunar eclipse can really kind of give you some great insight, not just on what you're personally battling yourself, but also the types of people you're drawing in. And you can conclude that you don't want, so solar eclipse tells you what kind of students you draw on. You don't want to date your students, okay? And the lunar eclipse tells you what kind of teachers you draw on. You don't want to sleep with your teachers either. A lot of times people will actually draw in their 20s and early 30s romantic partnerships that are more tied to the solar and lunar eclipse than they are to what they actually want romantically. So that's a little secret as well. And a lot of times in soulmate situations, I can't tell you how many times I found married couple have been married and happy their whole life, and behold, they have opposite solar and lunar eclipses. And that's when they're like, I thought that, Cancers never got along with, Libras. And that's true. Cancers and Libras don't tend to get along. But then I look deeper in their chart, and oh my gosh, he's got a solar eclipse in Sag, she's got a lunar eclipse in Sag. He's got a lunar eclipse in Gemini, she's got a solar eclipse in Gemini. So that is a soulmate situation or a connection where they're trading information in a balanced and equal way, and that's why Cancer in this case is getting along with Libra, so to speak. So check out your solar and lunar eclipses. They are absolutely fascinating to look at, and one of my little secret weapons to astrology. So don't go telling everyone, especially my competitors. This is one of the ways I can blow your mind when you get a reading with me. All right, that's all I have for this Astro 102, but I will see you next time. Live, love, be. Having trouble finding that special soulmate? Oh, I know. Are you ready to find love? So what do you think your ideal mate is? This I can solve for you. Check out Secrets of Birthdays, the Love and Lust Report at secretsofbirthdays.com.
So